They laughed at her. Her own family called her a failure, pushed her out, and told her she would never succeed. But what they didn't know was that the daughter they rejected would one day rise to build an empire that made them crawl. Welcome to Folktales Hub. Please subscribe and share to friends and watch till the end to learn from the story. There are some stories that are not easy to tell, because every word feels like reopening an old wound. But sometimes wounds are the only proof that you survived. This is the story of Aisha Karim, a girl born in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, into a family that believed they had already decided who would shine and who would fail. From the very beginning, Aisha felt like the shadow among stars. Her siblings, her brother Adam, and her sisters Nima and Salma, were treated like gifts from heaven. If Adam spoke, people listened. If Nima walked into a room, everyone admired her beauty. If Salma made the smallest effort, her parents praised her as if she had moved mountains. But when it came to Aisha, it was different. She was the one who never seemed to measure up. If she brought home a good grade from school, her parents shrugged and said maybe the teacher was just being kind. If she tried something new, like joining a school club or volunteering at a community event, she was warned not to embarrass the family. Her father, Mr. Karim, ran a long-standing trading business that moved goods from Dar es Salaam's port into neighboring countries like Rwanda, Uganda, and Zambia. It was a business with money, reputation, and power. Her mother, a reserved but sharp-tongued woman, carried herself with pride and always wanted to maintain an image of perfection. Together, they made sure the Karim family was respected in every social circle. But respect never trickled down to Aisha. At home, her siblings never missed a chance to remind her of her place. Adam, the eldest, would pat her on the head like a child and say, "Don't worry, Aisha. Not everyone can be smart enough for business." Nima, with her quick tongue, liked to smirk and add, "At least one of us will keep the Karim name shining." And Salma, with her soft-spoken cruelty, would tilt her head and say in her sugary voice, "Some people are just meant to live quietly, Aisha. That's okay. The world needs background people too." Every word sank into Aisha's heart like stones. But the moment that scarred her forever happened one Eid holiday, when the whole extended family gathered at their home. The long dining table was covered with palo rice, roasted goat, kachumbari, and trays of sweets. Relatives filled the room with laughter, telling stories of success: Adam's new deal, Nima's university scholarship, Salma's charity work. Everyone clapped, smiled, and raised their glasses. And then, suddenly, her father's voice cut through the noise. He looked straight at her, his fork pointed like a weapon, and said in a flat, sharp tone, "Aisha, maybe it's time you stop pretending. You're a waste of money. You will never succeed in business. Better you focus on finding a husband who can feed you." The laughter at the table died. For a heartbeat, Aisha thought maybe someone would defend her. But instead, her siblings filled the silence. Nima chuckled into her glass. Adam shook his head like it was simply the truth, and Salma reached out with a fake sympathetic smile to pat Aisha's hand. Her mother said nothing. She kept her eyes fixed on the serving dish of samosas, refusing to meet Aisha's gaze. Heat rushed to Aisha's face. Her chest tightened as if her ribs were collapsing inward. She forced herself to take a spoonful of rice, chewing slowly, swallowing the lump of shame that rose in her throat. In that moment, surrounded by polished silverware and smug smiles, Aisha realized something chilling. She was utterly alone in her own family. That night, while everyone else toasted to their bright futures, Aisha made a quiet promise to herself. "One day I will prove them wrong. One day they will regret every word." The years that followed were not kinder. In her early 20s, Aisha joined the family business, just hoping that if she worked hard enough they would finally see her value. She woke before dawn to prepare contracts, stayed in the office until the lights were off, and took on the work that no one else wanted. She answered calls, arranged shipments, and even came up with solutions when goods got delayed at the port. She believed that sweat and sacrifice would earn her respect. But Adam and Nima had different plans. Whenever Aisha came up with an idea, Adam repeated it in meetings as though it was his own. When she solved a transport issue, Nima rushed to tell their father before Aisha could, claiming credit for the solution. Slowly, recognition slipped away from her hands into theirs. What stung the most was not just the theft of her work, but her parents' blindness to it. They praised Adam as a natural leader, admired Nima's sharp mind, and applauded Salma for her social influence. When Aisha tried to speak up, her father dismissed her complaints. "You're imagining things. Stop creating drama. Your siblings would never treat you like that." Her mother added softly, "You should let it go, Aisha. Learn to support them instead of competing." The final wound came when her father pulled her aside after a meeting. He didn't bother to lower his voice. "You will never be a businesswoman, Aisha. Stop embarrassing yourself. Find a man, get married, and stop pretending to be clever." The words hit her harder than a slap. She stood frozen, humiliated, the hours of work and sacrifice erased in a single breath. And within weeks she was pushed out. Her name was removed from company files. Clients stopped copying her in emails. One morning, she came to the office to find her desk cleared out, her chair taken by someone else. Nobody explained. Nobody apologized. Her siblings stood together, smug, while her parents acted as if it was all for the best. Aisha walked out of the Kareem transport office with nothing but her handbag and a hollow ache in her chest. The company she had poured herself into had spit her out as if she was disposable. But beneath the humiliation, something else began to burn: anger. "Quiet. Steady." She left the Kareem household with only a small suitcase, a few clothes, and her old Toyota Corolla that coughed and rattled each time she started it. There was no goodbye, no blessing, not even a glance from the window as she drove away. She found a small one-room apartment in a crowded part of Dar es Salaam. The paint was peeling, the floor creaked, and the ceiling leaked during the rains. The thin walls carried every sound of neighbors arguing or radios blaring late into the night. But it was hers. A place where nobody sneered at her. A place where she could lock the door and cry without witnesses. Bills piled up quickly, and her savings disappeared. To survive, Aisha took a job as a cashier in a supermarket. The hours were long, the pay small, and the customers often treated her like she was invisible. Still, she showed up every day, wearing her name tag with tired dignity. When that wasn't enough, she picked up extra shifts cleaning offices at night. Her hands blistered from scrubbing floors, her back ached from lifting heavy bins, and sometimes she could barely keep her eyes open. But she refused, absolutely refused, to crawl back to her family's door. Some nights, she ate only chapati and tea, staring at the cracked ceiling of her apartment, whispering to herself, "I will not give them the satisfaction of seeing me beg." Months blurred together. Her body grew weaker, but her spirit hardened. Deep inside, she carried a flame that refused to die. She told herself again and again, "This is not my end. This is only the beginning." That was how Aisha's story truly began. Not with applause, not with praise, but with rejection so deep it cut to the bone. She did not know then how far she would climb. She did not know that one day, she would own fleets of trucks, warehouses, and contracts that moved goods across East Africa. She did not know that her name, once spoken with contempt, would one day be whispered with respect. All she knew, sitting in that broken-down apartment with blistered hands and an empty stomach, was one thing: she would rise. When life pushes you into the mud, you have two choices: stay there or rise covered in scars. Aisha Kareem, broken and humiliated, was slowly discovering her strength in the shadows of Dar es Salaam. She had been out of her family's life for over a year now. Her siblings were thriving in their father's company, at least from the outside. Meanwhile, she was surviving on two small jobs that barely covered rent and food. She walked the dusty streets with her head down, tired from long shifts, but inside her mind, something restless kept whispering, "This is not the end. There must be more." Every evening after work, she walked past the endless flow of trucks rumbling in and out of the city. The sight always caught her eye. Old, battered trucks carrying bags of cement. Shiny new ones hauling containers from the port. Drivers shouting, engines roaring, traffic choking the roads. It was chaos, but it was also life. Goods had to move. People depended on it. A thought began to take root in her mind. Transport is the heartbeat of this country. One night, while cleaning offices on the upper floors of a tall building, Aisha stopped by a large window. Below her, the city stretched out like a restless sea. She saw the headlights of hundreds of trucks crawling along the roads. Some moved in long lines toward the port, others disappeared into the night, heading inland. She pressed her hand against the glass and whispered to herself, "If I cannot sit at their table, I will build my own. I will move things they cannot." It was the first time she allowed herself to dream beyond survival. The dream, however, had no clear shape yet. She had no money, no trucks, no connections. What she did have was a stubborn will and the sharp memory of how the family business worked. She remembered the contracts, the routes, the delays at the port, the desperate clients calling for help. Those memories became her quiet education. One morning, while she was working at the supermarket, a man walked in wearing a dusty reflective vest. He was a truck driver, buying water bottles and snacks before heading out. Aisha served him with her usual quiet politeness, but when he noticed her tired eyes, he asked, "Dada, you look like someone who hasn't slept. Long night shift." She smiled faintly. "Something like that." The man chuckled. "I'm about to drive 12 hours to Mwanza. Believe me, you don't want my job." That small conversation opened something in her heart. She started asking drivers questions whenever she met them. About their routes, the struggles they faced, the problems with breakdowns, and the challenges with middlemen who stole money. The drivers, surprised that someone cared to listen, often poured out their frustrations. Aisha kept their words in her mind like treasure. The true turning point came a few months later. While resting in her apartment, she overheard two neighbors arguing outside. One man, a small business owner, was furious because a delivery of goods he had ordered from Dar es Salaam had been delayed for weeks. "These transport companies are useless," he shouted. "The goods are sitting at the port, and no one cares. I'm losing customers every day." That night Aisha could not sleep. She turned the words over and over. Transport delays. Goods sitting at the port. Businesses losing money. She had seen it before in her father's company, and she had even solved it once or twice. Suddenly the picture became clearer. What if she could be the person businesses trusted to move their goods quickly and honestly? But reality hit her like a wall. She had no truck. Not even one. Still, the fire inside her refused to go out. She started saving every shilling she could from her cashier and cleaning jobs. It was slow, painfully slow. After nearly a year, she had just enough to rent a small kiosk space near the port. It wasn't much, just a wooden desk, a plastic chair, and a second-hand signboard she painted herself with shaky hands. On the signboard she wrote, "Aisha Transport Services. Reliable, honest, on time." First people laughed. Truck drivers passing by smirked at the young woman sitting in her kiosk with nothing but a notebook. One even teased her. "Madam, where is your truck? Show me your fleet." Aisha only smiled and said quietly, "One day you will see them." Her first break came in the most unexpected way. A small hardware shop owner, desperate to move some goods to Morogoro, walked into her kiosk. He was frustrated with another company that kept delaying his order. "Can you help me?" he asked doubtfully. "I don't see any trucks here." Aisha's heart raced. She had no trucks, but she had made friends with a few independent drivers, men struggling to find steady work. She promised the shop owner that she could deliver within 2 days. Then she ran to find one of the drivers she knew, begged him to take the job, and negotiated a small commission for herself. It worked. The goods arrived on time. The shop owner was so relieved that he paid her a little extra and promised to tell his friends. That night, Aisha sat in her tiny apartment with the money in her hands. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Her first honest profit. She cried quietly, whispering, "This is only the beginning." Word spread slowly but surely. More small shop owners came to her kiosk, testing her promises. Each time, Aisha worked tirelessly, calling drivers, double-checking routes, ensuring goods were delivered. She didn't sleep much, but her reputation began to grow. People started calling her the woman who never disappoints. But success never comes without challenges. Some clients refused to trust her because she was a woman. They sneered, "Transport is for men. Go home, mama." Others tried to cheat her out of her small commissions. Drivers sometimes broke promises, leaving her scrambling to fix problems. More than once, she sat on the floor of her kiosk, head in her hands, tears running down her face as everything seemed to collapse. But she always wiped her tears and stood back up. After 2 years of struggle, Aisha finally saved enough to buy her first truck. It wasn't new. In fact, it was a noisy second-hand beast that coughed smoke each time it started. But when the keys were handed to her, she held them tightly in her fist as though they were gold. She named the truck Tumaini, hope. Driving through the streets of Dar es Salaam in her own truck for the first time, Aisha felt like the whole world had shifted. She was no longer borrowing someone else's strength. She had her own. That single truck became 2. 2 became 5. And soon, her small kiosk was replaced with a proper office near the port, painted in bright blue with bold letters. Kareem Logistics and Transport. The irony of the name did not escape her. The same name her family once used to humiliate her was now the name of her rising empire. As the years passed, Aisha learned to master the game of logistics. She built relationships with port officials, created fair contracts with drivers, and earned the loyalty of struggling businesses who finally found someone they could trust. Her company grew step by step, fueled not just by profit but by stubborn defiance. Every contract signed was a slap to her father's words. Every truck added to her fleet was a reminder to her siblings that she was not the background character in anyone's story. And deep down, she knew the day would come when they would see her again. Not as the failure they once mocked, but as the woman who had risen from nothing to build an empire. Years passed like seasons changing. What once began as a single rusty truck had grown into a fleet of gleaming vehicles, each proudly carrying the Kareem Logistics and Transport logo along Tanzania's highways. From Dar es Salaam's port to the farthest towns in Mwanza, from the dusty roads of Dodoma to the borders of Zambia, her trucks moved goods with precision. She now owned warehouses, employed hundreds of drivers, and had contracts with international companies who trusted her above anyone else. In every sense of the word, Aisha Kareem had built an empire. But beyond the shiny trucks and the contracts, she had built something far more valuable: respect. Her name was now spoken in boardrooms and at the port with admiration. She was no longer the forgotten daughter. She was Mama Kareem, the woman who turned obstacles into stepping stones. Meanwhile, the family that once mocked her was slipping downhill. Her father had grown older and weaker, his once booming voice reduced to a tired rasp. The company he had handed to Adam, Nima, and Salma was crumbling. Mismanagement, corruption, and careless spending had drained its strength. Shipments got delayed, clients pulled out, and debts piled up. The Kareem family mansion that once echoed with parties and laughter now sat quieter. The children who had been praised as golden stars could not hold the business together. And yet, none of them knew that the very empire swallowing their contracts, one after another, belonged to Aisha. She had worked in silence, acquiring small deals that turned into large contracts, until even the clients her siblings depended on began shifting to her. To them, Kareem Logistics and Transport was just a name they trusted. Not knowing the face behind it was the sister they had once humiliated. The moment of truth came when Aisha received an invitation. It was from her mother. A family reunion, she wrote, a gathering of all the children and relatives. For a moment, Aisha almost laughed. The same mother who once told her to stop competing, to find a husband instead of chasing dreams, now wanted her presence. She held the invitation in her hand, silent for a long time. Then she smiled faintly. "Yes," she whispered. "It's time." The day of the reunion arrived. Relatives filled the Karim mansion, just like the Eid celebration years ago. The air smelled of palo, nyama choma, and spices. Laughter rose from the rooms as cousins caught up on stories. But the mood was different this time, thinner, edged with whispers. The old glory of the Karim family had faded. People talked about the debts, the failing business, and the growing empire of Karim Logistics that was taking over the transport industry. Inside, Adam stood by the window, his face drawn with stress. Nima adjusted her expensive jewelry as though it could hide the worry in her eyes. Salma scrolled through her phone, posting pictures to maintain an illusion of wealth. Their father sat at the head of the dining table, his posture weaker but his pride still stiff. He looked like a man clinging to the last pieces of a crown slipping from his head. And then the sound of engines outside. Aisha arrived, not in the battered Toyota Corolla of her past, but in a convoy of her company trucks that lined the street like an army. She stepped out of a sleek car, dressed in a simple but elegant suit. Not flashy, not loud, yet her presence turned every head. Whispers swept through the relatives. Some gasped. Some smiled knowingly. It's her. Aisha Karim. The woman behind Karim Logistics. As she entered the dining hall, silence fell. The same table where she was once humiliated now stood before her. She walked with calm steps, her eyes scanning each face. Adam's mouth hung open. Nima's smirk vanished. Salma's phone slipped from her fingers. Her mother pressed her lips together, torn between pride and guilt. Her father gripped his cane, his knuckles white. Aisha sat down slowly at the table. The silence stretched until she broke it with a steady voice. Do you remember the last time we sat here together? You told me I would never succeed, that I should stop embarrassing myself, that I should find a man to feed me. The words landed heavily. Nobody dared to breathe. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving her father's. You were wrong. She told them everything. Not with anger but with calm strength. How she had started with nothing, how she listened to truck drivers, how she built trust with small businesses, how her company grew step by step until it now controlled much of the very trade routes their business had lost. Every word was like a mirror, forcing them to see the truth they had denied for years. Finally, she said, her voice clear and firm. The empire you thought I could never build is now mine. Karim Logistics and Transport belongs to me. The name you used to mock me with is now the name that feeds hundreds of families. And your company, the one you cast me out of, now survives on the contracts I allow you to keep. Her siblings shifted uncomfortably. Adam clenched his jaw, Nima's eyes shone with unshed tears, and Salma whispered, "This can't be." But it was. Her father, once a man of thunder, sat silent. His pride cracked like old stone. He tried to speak, but his voice trembled. "Aisha," he croaked, his eyes lowering for the first time. We didn't see your worth." Aisha stood. She looked at each of them, the family that had buried her alive, and then said words that would stay with them forever. "I am not here to seek your approval anymore. I am not here to beg for your love. I came to show you that the daughter you ignored, the sister you humiliated, the woman you called a failure, has risen. And nothing you do can erase that." Her voice did not shake. Her hands did not tremble. She had carried her pain for years, and now she had turned it into power. She took a deep breath and finished, softly but firmly. "You wanted me to disappear. But instead, I became unforgettable." With that, she turned and walked out of the mansion, her head high. The relatives whispered in awe. Her siblings sat frozen, their once bright confidence shattered. Her father bowed his head, broken by the weight of his own words returning to haunt him. Outside, her convoy waited. Drivers saluted her with respect. Workers smiled with pride. As the engines roared to life, Aisha looked up at the sky, her heart swelling with something she had not felt in years, peace. She had not only built an empire, she had reclaimed her dignity. And as her trucks rolled out of the neighborhood, Leaving behind the crumbling house of pride and betrayal, she whispered to herself, "I am Aisha Karim, the forgotten daughter no more." Her story became a lesson passed from mouth to mouth, from Dar es Salaam to the farthest borders of East Africa. A lesson that sometimes the ones written off as failures are simply the ones writing their own destiny. A lesson that rejection can be the fire that forges an unbreakable soul. And most of all, a reminder that the girl no one believed in can one day return as the woman everyone remembers.